what's up, how's it hanging? How's it happen? You guys know this is Kevin from the Chord Progression Podcast. The podcast Rolling Stone magazine says initiates profound discussions with rock and metal artists, allowing fans to discover the creative workflow of their favorite musicians and understand the facts that make the band succeed or fall from fame. We are all sponsored by Dark Fusion Systems, the best of your custom computing needs. Get $100 off your entire bill. Use code CPPOD at darkfusionsystems.com. Link to your podcast below. Now let's go to our feature presentation. You know the Agonist? You know a band Stuck Mojo? Well, they've got members in this band, and it's called SickSense. Yes, we got Vicky, we got Robby here. We have a great conversation around their brand new album, Cross Me Twice, coming out on Valentine's Day of 2025. We talk about the band and their mindset behind writing the album. We talk about the human relationship and the human experience when it comes to finding that balance between respect, integrity, and action, along with just how their writing process really works in order to create these moments where they can talk about darker things, but always put a silver lining in them as well. A great conversation is to be had here, so be ready for it and enjoy. Let's go! Yeah. Well, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, listeners of the Chord Progression Podcast. When I found out about this band, and the label of them was like alt metal, but then you look into it and they've got mixtures of new metal, progressive metal, power metal, metalcore. It's like a metal hodgepodge just thrown all into this in the best possible way. They've released a couple of EPs so far, but their brand new album, Cross Me Twice, comes out on Valentine's Day, February 14th, 2025. And this is going to be an interesting one because we got a lot of power behind this one and a lot of fun. So please welcome Vicky and Rob from the band SickSense of the podcast. So both of you, welcome to the Chord Progression Podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. What's up?
Hey, not much. Just enjoying my time sitting here talking with you both. What's up with you?
We're good. I mean, we're here. Sorry, our dog decided to just, playtime right now.
He wants to be in the podcast.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll say, to be fair, though, when dogs enter in the podcast, it's always a good time.
It is. How can you not like that? No, it's all good. But no, we're good. We're stoked. We're stoked to chat with you and see what comes of it.
Chat with me, see what comes of it. And, well, one thing I do want to start out with was because I was looking through the band, I was looking through the press releases I could find and see what was been going on. And I saw that for this album as well, there was a huge relocation that happened, going from eastern part of the continental part of the United States, but actually it was Montreal in Canada, so way even further up there, all the way to a completely different part of that continent here in America, but Phoenix. So going from like cold winter to hot, arid desert. So when it comes to that type of huge transition, not only why did you make that transition, but when it came to writing Cross Me Twice and working on this, how did that absolute massive change of location impact this record?
It's a good question. I know on paper it sounds crazy. If you know us, it's not that crazy, I guess. I actually lived for a really long time in Greece. I'm Greek. So I was there for like 15, 16 years, and it gets really hot there. So I'm used to the climate. And actually, the band was based in Montreal just because the majority of our members were there at the time. Robby's from Montreal, but I'm actually from Chicago. So the two of us lived in Chicago and would just travel to Montreal back and forth to kind of just get stuff done. But then we were done. We were done with Chicago. We wanted a change. We wanted better weather, better like lifestyle and all that. And from years of touring and just kind of evaluating different places, we were like, Phoenix, like it's awesome here. So it was kind of a no-brainer. And so like when we moved down here, then it just made sense that like, okay, the band is based out of here now, I guess that answers that. And then how it impacted the album. Not a lot. I mean, like we always just record from home and do what we can. And I guess it's impacted us moving forward that like now we have a new home base. So like the release show we're doing, it's going to be here in Phoenix. It's not in Montreal anymore, just meeting new bands and going out to shows here in Phoenix, which is a great scene. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
Did you have anything to add?
it didn't really change our workflow because we always
Yeah.
would songwrite from home, and we
Yeah.
are very capable of recording ourselves with like vocals and guitars and bass. We can do that here. The only thing we have to go to a studio for is to record acoustic drums. So didn't really affect our work schedule with creating the music.
Yeah.
I'll say I can understand that not necessarily affecting the work schedule and how you overall go through your workflow of songwriting, recording, everything that goes around there. But when it comes to, especially when you're talking about, bands based in Montreal, but you also lived in Chicago. And like I said earlier, I'm from Milwaukee, so I'm 90 miles north. So the climate is very similar. And it is an impact thing, too, where you are sitting here. It's a much different mindset being in summer up here in these areas than it is during the winter. The days are longer in summer. It's warmer. Sometimes it gets humid out here. But the winter, the days are short. It is cold. It is just dark. And it creates this potential change in a mindset and just energy level to where, if you're writing in summer versus writing in winter, you might have a little bit of these specific nuances that change just based on the climate, based on the mindset that you're in. Because I remember this was when it comes to Beartooth, when they've been writing all their records with Caleb Shomo, primarily based out of Ohio. Yeah, it's a much different mindset, but then he moved out to LA when they wrote The Surface. And it had a much more positive outlook, a much more brighter outlook, just given the way the mindset was. So that's kind of where I was most curious about was there like a mindset shift, even if it was very minimal, that you noticed going from a place where the seasons are always happening and always changing versus a place where the climate is rather consistent, having much more of this warmer temperature consistently?
I think for us with this album in particular, at least for me, like coming from like my lyrics and like what I brought to the table, I think I was more in a headspace of like, it's not the climate that was like putting me in a certain mood. It's what I go through in my life. And like at that time we were having like behind the scenes, like some turmoil going on with our past band members. Things were a little difficult and tense. And that like put me in this certain mindset to like be like, okay, you know what, I'm going to be writing about this stuff and like what I'm going through or what we're going through at that time and our frustrations, and we put it into our music. So for me, it's always that. It always comes at like, where's my headspace at? Like, what am I going through like outside of work or life?
Yeah, there's that, and there's also like how you approach songwriting and the stuff you want to talk about. I can't imagine us writing, like, just because we moved here and it's sunshine and we love it, I can't imagine writing a full record that's just like sunshine and rainbows. Like, that would be boring for me. I feel like the best records talk about like real life struggles, and I always we like to like sneak in like a glimmer of hope when we can. Like, a lot of our choruses are positive and uplifting, because I think that's the best part of metal music, that it's like, it sounds angry, and a lot of people that don't listen to it don't understand why you would do this. Like, why are you screaming? But it's like an escape from reality. But then I don't like the bands that are always like, fuck this, fuck that too. Like, you gotta have some kind of positive message in there. So I think our music will always have that, where it's like, okay, we're talking about this heavy topic that like brings a lot of people down and people can relate to, but here's like a nice spin to it, or a nice positive like silver lining, which I think we would do wherever we lived, so yeah.
I was going to say that makes a lot of sense. And that seems like what a lot of writers do is, of course, they're going to focus on what their headspace is at that point in time. Of course, when it comes to just the location that you're in, the weather, it can also just add a little bit of that intensity or a little bit more amplification on, especially if you're in winter, it's darker, it's colder, it's a little bit more dingy and depressing. If you're talking about something heavy, you're talking about something rather dark, the amplification of that can be just a little bit more, just given the, the way your headspace is feeling at that time. But it does actually stand true to the where you want to focus in on the things that you're really thinking about right now, the headspace that you're in, and not always being, super duper positive, or that super duper positive uplifting band that's always focusing on one thing, or focusing on just the darker side of things and just really being more doom and gloom about it. Are there bands out there that do that and do that well? Absolutely. There's a niche for everything. But if it's not going to be something that you're fully into, or you really feel authentically in you, you're not going to want to stick in that and be a one-trick pony when it comes to your songwriting. You want to be able to go and expand and look at all these different instances, all these different experiences and bring out these messages the way you want to. So even when you're going and diving deeper into some of these darker and heavier topics, but having a piece in that song or that songwriting where you can put that silver lining, put that glimmer of hope, put that little piece of inspiration, of positivity, that even when it's dark, there is that little bit of light that you can go and focus in on and be able to get out of that. It's something that, not many people see, especially when they're in those darker moments, but it's something that when they finally discover it, they will just go charging right at it and break out of that darkness. But when you're in that darkness, you still have to know that light is there so you can try and find it and at least have the hope that you're going to be able to get to that point at some point in the future.
Yeah. That sums it all up nicely. Yeah.
I just wrap it all up, put it in a bow, deliver it, boom, and now we're it's like, okay, now we're set. But still going forward into this, because I was looking more into the record and seeing more of what was said about it. What I was seeing out were themes that included, emotional manipulation, villainous scapegoating, and reflecting on fortitude of an entity to take the reins of their own life and faith. So there was a lot to go on to this record. So really, when it came to going through the record, writing about these themes and writing about the things that you wanted to write, how did this headspace all come into play? I know you said you wrote from that headspace, but what was all the influences coming in to really write this record with those heavier topics in mind?
Oh, there's various things we were going through, with previous bands that we were in, or our current members, even on the later end of writing this album. So it was just these frustrations of dealing with people that you feel are supposed to have your back, or you're supposed to be on the same team, and you're just always butting heads in a negative direction. So I think that's where a lot of the inspiration came from. And then we ended up writing the songs in a way where that's what inspired that for us personally, but they're written in a way where it's you can take the songs and the lyrics as something to do with a relationship, either a romantic one or something, that's relatable to you, or that you've been through with your friends. So we always like to write things in that way where it's not so direct, it's specifically about this. That's where the inspiration may have come from, but we write in a way where it's up to your interpretation.
Yeah. I think all human relationships they're similar, whether they're romantic or friendship or family or whatever, there's a bond there usually. Some are stronger than others, but I think what's tricky about human relationships in general is that balance and that respect, that we're not going to be the same person, which is great, because you don't want the people you hang out with, you don't want them to just be an echo chamber of yourself, because life would be boring. The best friendships and the best relationships are dynamic,
and honest.
Yes. But I think what's tough with establishing a relationship that can stand the test of time is that mutual respect, that it's okay, we're different in these aspects, but I respect you for being this way, if you can respect me for being that way. But I think a lot of people in today's climate especially, they frown upon you for your choices. When your choices or the way you live your life doesn't align with the way they live their lives, there's that disconnect, I guess. And I think it's a shame, because we lose focus of okay, what initially brought us together to begin with, and then throw that into the mix with being in a band. You have a relationship between 5, 6, however many people are in a band, all different people, different things they love about music. That's another thing when you're writing a record, especially Cross Me Twice, which is super dynamic in terms of the genres and the influences and all that. We're not always going to I'm not going to listen to every part of every song and be yo, this is sick, I love it all. There's obviously things I gravitate to more towards on a personal level than, let's say, someone else. And it's very common that a guitar player will look at the riffs and a drummer will look at the drums. I don't expect everyone to be hey, look at these lyrics I wrote and put them on a pedestal. We all have different things we prefer and we notice. And that's cool. But at the same time, again, there has to be that respect where it's just okay, maybe this part isn't my favorite part of a song, but I understand why you did it, and I understand it services the song. Maybe I'm not crazy about guitar solos, but there's this one guitar solo that it's just adds and makes it perfect, and that's what I think relationships are like compromise and communication and understanding. And I think there's a lack of that a lot in today's age. We've certainly gone through it, but the thing I like to say is that, well, if I experienced it, then everybody else did too. I'm not special, everyone else is going through this as well in their own way. So I think a lot of the record is based on that, and it's presented in that way that everyone can relate.
I really like how you both just put that overall, Robby, when you're talking about, taking personal experiences, but then not writing from like that absolute personal place, because if you're writing with that specific thing in mind, unless someone went through the exact same thing you did, they're going to look at that song and just kind of get lost because they have not experienced that. They don't have anything that might be closely related to that. So then they just break away and those aren't able to connect with the song as they would if you took that and then took an inspiration from a specific point. But Vicky, what you went on and really got me thinking was talking about human relationships, and you talk about that balance and respect. Because absolutely in today's day and age, when it comes to relationships, family, friends, or even take a look at our own individualistic human relationships with society in general and how that all impacts us, we see so many different negativities where people are being, just left in the dust by their friends, family, even relationships, because they aren't in that echo chamber state, or they're not absolutely agreeing with everything you think and everything you say. Or to even add to that, as time goes on, as humans, we continue to change. We continue to evolve because we learn new things. We experience new things. Our perspectives change. We become different. Because right now, I'm 29 years old. I'm much different than I was at 21. I think different. I act different. The things I listen to are different. The things I'm interested into are different. So people change and grow as they go on. And especially with certain relationships, people are very so focused in on wanting people to say the exact same as they were either when they met them or when they liked them the most. So when that change continues to happen, that respect ends up deteriorating, and that overall balance ends up being shifted so out of focus, where people you might absolutely be connected to and people you might absolutely love being with 5 years ago, you don't anymore. But it's not because they change. It's because you refuse to actually find that balance with them as they change, because you want them to stick in one specific spot and that's it. So it brings forward all these different ideas, like I brought up, emotional manipulation, villainous scapegoating, to potentially ruin different friendships. And not only are you ruining friendships, but you're making your life in turn worse, because that respect is gone. And now you're limiting the people you can actually converse with and actually connect with, when those people that you connect with for so long, you have such big history with and such great memories with and such shared experiences with. Would you throw that all away because they started changing and you didn't like the way they changed because it didn't fit the exact idea that you had for them?
I'm like not about that. I think when people change dramatically, for the worse, at least, there's a reason. And if you're a true friend, like, I think you need to be able to be honest about that and be like, hey man, like, what's going up? Like, what's going on? I was gonna say, what's up? What's going on? Yeah. But I think that's another thing too, that's existing in today's society, that a lot of people are too afraid to speak up. So if you see someone going down like a negative path, you're like, oh, I can't say anything. I don't want to like offend them or anything, or make it feel like I'm judging them. But it's like, sometimes you need to judge like if you're close, like to me, I like to say this often. I'm Greek, and we're like, most Greek people, they just blurt out whatever's on their mind. Like there's no like political correctness of like, oh, I can't say that, I'm going to hurt your feelings. I think it's even more hurtful if I don't say it. Because it's like, I'm just allowing you to just continue to do that. And I'm going to, if something truly bad happens, I'm going to feel bad, because I'm going to feel like I didn't do my best to communicate that, like, hey, you got to like wake up. So I'm not about that. I feel like the people that I consider close, I've always been pretty blunt and honest, and that has certainly backfired for me. Like sometimes Robby tells me, like, you don't realize how mean you are sometimes. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. And I certainly would want, like, just like he would say, sometimes you're mean. I would want, in a situation, if I'm maybe not communicating things in the best way, like, yeah, call me out on it. And I'll be like, oh shit, you were right. Maybe I could have been a bit nicer about that. But it always comes from a place of good intentions for me. And I want people to do better, and I want people to aspire to be better. So I just don't really like it when, you're caught in between all this stuff and you're just too afraid to speak up because you might alienate more people. I think in the long run, that hurts. That hurts even more. So, yeah, I don't know.
Well, to add to what Vicky's saying, but in a different way, like taking it back to more of like a band dynamic or like a music business perspective, I believe that like all musicians or anyone who starts a band together, they all want the same thing, in that they want the band to be as successful as possible. And you take steps to get there, moving in that direction. But sometimes when you're working with other people, you have different ideas of how to go about that stuff. So in our case with SickSense, I really feel like we came at a crossroads with the other guys in the band where they wanted certain things in their life and they wanted to live outside of the band a certain way. And that's fine, do it, will make you happy. But then like in terms of like the business decisions that were being brought forward by them, they were kind of like doing stuff where we've done it in the past with other bands that it's like, we know that didn't work. That's not going to work doing things in this way. So we need to operate in this other way. And you need to be on board with that. And then like there was like a crossroads that happened there and disagreements, and there's a lot more to it. But at the end of the day, it's just like, what can we do to make the band as good as it can be and be the best like moving forward?
Yeah. But, to add to that, I think sometimes that's just like excuses. I just think at the end of the day, and this is within a band dynamic, but in general, a lot of people say that they want things in life, and maybe they do, but they don't want to do any of the work that they don't like to get what they want. Like, example, some people, they want to like be super fit and like lose weight and get like a 6-pack, but when they see what you need to do to get that, they're like, and I think that's just human nature in general. I think it's easier to say that you want something and then not want to put in the hard work that you don't enjoy, because there's a lot of people that are hardworking, but as long as you enjoy that hard work, like I think it's easier to get through. But just to not make it super specific, because these are all topics we write about, and it's constantly like I'm the type of person where it's like if I see something, even if it's not personal to me, like something that happened to a friend or someone I know, it could be a pool of inspiration. But yeah,
it's just like coming from a place of, just to wrap that up, it's like, all right, if you want to go somewhere, well, this is what it takes to get there. Are you down to do it or not? And that's what it just comes down to.
I think you put it great in that respect too, because it is human nature to always want more, always have these desires, have these goals, and really vocalize them, because you feel like if you vocalize them, then you have a better chance of happening. But when you see all the work that has to get put in there, there's going to be hard work in there no matter what you do. And there's going to be things that you're just like, hey, this comes natural to me. This is easy. Even though it's hard, it's going to be something that I can do. But then you find the stuff where you just don't want to do it. We as humans want to go and follow that path of least resistance. That's very much in nature as well. Why is, when it comes to heat, why does it go to the path of least resistance? Why does you like naturally you go and like curve certain ways because in like you're driving, because it's the path of least resistance if you're not holding on to the wheel. It's just the way that physics works at the same time too. So our brains work in a very similar capacity. And if we don't have the fortitude to break through that, then we constantly go down this path of easiness, but then we get put off potentially in a worse spot. Thinking about what you were talking about, Vicky, with being a little bit more brash up front and just speaking what you think at those points in times, even if it might, hurt people, but it might be the thing they need to hear. If we constantly hold that in and we don't say anything over fear of offending somebody, that's the path of least resistance to not get in a potential confrontation. But as that happens, that person might slip further and further down into those negative traits that are not only going to negatively impact themselves, but the others around them as well. And is over time, especially the past, I would say 20 years, especially society, and we've definitely gone away from having those confrontations to now society seems like it's much more splintered and divided than it ever has been in the past 10, 20, 30 years. So it continues to happen. And it speaks to just, again, when you're going through these things with the band, when you're thinking about these ideas and getting the inspiration from them, you're coming from those specifics and being able to see that. But then when it comes to creating it within the music as well to connect to people, you're taking these personal experiences, you're taking the ideas that are behind them, creating the songs around those ideas, those inspirations, so that when we hear them, not only can we see the broader scope of what you're talking about, but we can also dive deeper into the more specifics, but not the specific story that you were going from, but the specific story that we relate to that connects with that. And especially when we're talking about the human experience, the connection with people, or right now the lack thereof, or the more splintered side of things, it definitely is a very relevant idea. And having an album and having music that doesn't necessarily fit a very specific mold of sound or a specific idea can really allow everything to amplify differently when you're allowing yourselves to creatively have different parts in there, whether it's something heavy and fast paced, whether it's something that has a little more of that new metal flair to it, whether it has this funky progression, more of a progressive way, maybe if it's a little bit more ballady or a little bit more symphonic, maybe it's just rapid, fast paced, in your face power metal. It could be whatever it is. But by being able to take those ideas and inspirations, expand on them from your songwriting perspective to be a little bit more metaphoric so we can understand the concept and then dive deep into our own related situations while hearing the music and being able to follow along with the emotion, because there's so much that can possibly happen. You have the open ability for people to just connect to these things in so many different ways. That's the beauty of it.
Yeah, and it's great as a songwriter too sometimes to see other people's stories, to see like their own interpretation or a specific lyric maybe that they attach themselves to. Sometimes, people are like, this song is just about my life, and it's very rewarding to see that, that's something that you created from scratch, something original, just can speak to people in that way. It's great. It's a great feeling.
I'm assuming at some point during your musical careers, you've had people come up to you either after shows at the merch table to express that to you.
Yeah. It definitely has happened. And I think those are like we were talking about earlier, those are those like silver linings, or there's the moments of sunshine, because I don't know how many musicians like to talk about this, but like touring isn't easy. It's the opposite of easy until maybe you're an amphitheater level band or something, and you can like afford to travel in like the most like optimum circumstances and all that. But it certainly takes a toll on you physically and mentally, and a lot of it is like high risk too. Like you don't know if you're going to come home with any money, you don't know if like you're going to have your rent next month and all that, and it's a tough thing for a lot of musicians. And I think the shows themselves and just connecting with fans and all that those are the moments that you're reminded like, oh, okay, this is why I do it. It's worth it for those moments. And it's like I said, it's a great feeling, and it balances out all the shit you have to eat, I guess, sometimes, metaphorically, not literally. And I don't have much else to add to that.
Yeah, it's nice. It really makes it worth it. You're like, oh, when somebody like shares their personal story, like they've overcame something and they share that with you, it's like, oh wow, I didn't realize like you're connecting or relating in that way, because this song meant this to me, but this means this to you, and that's special. And it makes it be like, oh, you know what, there's all these like people that are like hating on us or like don't like our music and like say, hey, you suck, or this is trash. And then it's like, well, we're doing this for like ourselves first of all, and then it's like if people vibe with it, it's cool to see that there's those people who like really relate on a deep personal level, and they're like, no, I see through whatever everyone else is saying about you guys, and like it means this to me. And it's like, oh, that's really special. That's cool. So I think if you're making music like that and it hits some people, at least some people in that way, you're doing the right thing.
I mean, at that point, you're just positively impacting people's lives for the better. And you could probably attest to this too, not only with your music, but the music you loved, not only growing up or even listen to now, where you're finding songs from artists where you have no idea the exact place it came from, but you listen to that song and you just feel so connected to it, where it takes you back to a certain time when you were happy, or takes you back to a certain time where you were at your absolute worst, but it reminds you of how you were at your absolute worst, but you somehow got through it. And if you ever go through something bad again, you know you have the strength to get out of that and continue to go forward. So it's being able to hear people say stuff like that has to give you this amplification of just positivity, especially in those hard times on the road, traveling, not getting the best sleep, not in the most optimal conditions, always feeling like you're kind of like in this, like you don't have your own personal space. So it adds a comfortability to it and this positivity that allows you to keep going even in those tougher times. It's a beautiful thing to hear. And I do hope that every band that's ever been on the podcast, or every band that's ever going to be on the podcast, and every band that's ever going to be a band gets a chance to at least feel that a couple of times, where people come up to them and directly describe to them like how a song impacts them for the good, or how it made them feel so much better. Because then, you know, even if your band is a major success, even if it doesn't last long, that your time spent creating something at least impacted somebody in a very positive manner. That's going to be something that they're never going to forget for the rest of their lives, and is going to have a positive impact on the people they connect with going forward.
100%. Yeah. It's, no one can ever take that away from you. You know, like every song you write, or every video you put out, or every show you play, it's like your stamp. You're making history in your own way, and some people's impact on history is bigger than others, sure, but you know, all the little impacts count, because altogether they create a bigger impact. And it's like, yeah, the best thing you can do as an artist is look back 10-20 years later and be like, I'm really proud of that thing I did, you know. I would hate to be the type of person to look back and be like, wow, that sucked, you know, or why did I even do that? Or because I do, like, positivity and all that is great. It's fantastic. That's why we do this. But it's, the music industry is just like any industry where it's like, it's not all great people that are involved in it. And sometimes people are there for like the wrong reasons, like playing rock star or whatever. They don't really care about the music that they write. The music is just a vehicle so they can go on stage and, like, you know, look awesome or whatever and get praised, and feeding their ego and whatever. And there's a lot of, unfortunately, artists like that out there. But yeah, I like, as the person that I am, I can't even imagine being like that, like going to sleep every night and like not loving the music you create, and just being like, yeah, whatever. I just needed a song just so I could go play a show and get a #1 hit on the radio or whatever. Like that's so far and distant for me. And yeah, you never know how big it's going to get, or if the band is going to break up or whatever. I don't measure success in that way. I measure success in a way where it's like, okay, are you fulfilled? Are you going to be able to look back and be like, yeah, I'm proud of that. That was awesome. You know?
I kind of follow along with that too, where I always looked at it as success is relative to happiness, where if you look at like success from a financial standpoint from the music industry, like how big your project is, how big your band is, how big your songs make it, then you're not really looking at the right thing. Because there could be someone out there who, let's just say, because I got a buddy, he's married, has 1 kid, owns his own house, he cuts metal for a living, and absolutely enjoys everything he does. And it's, I look at him like, you know, in the terms of like a financial success, is he making, you know, 6-7 figures a year? I don't think he's there. I have no idea what his finances are. But is the dude enjoying life to the fullest? Yeah. So who's to say he's not a success in his life? When it comes to being an artist, if you love what you do and you love the music you're putting out there and you love how it's going to make and connect to people, yeah, then you're definitely becoming a success in that area, because you're feeling that fulfillment that you're of what you want to do with your life. Because not everyone wants to be like a Wall Street banker that's making $1 million a day. Not everybody wants to go through that. Never wants to do that because they're not interested in it. So if you find what that fulfillment and happiness is for you, and you go and attack it and actually go for it, yeah, then you're going to end up finding that happiness at some point. Because I think it was Bob Marley that said, like, after all the, like, everything's gone in the world, we'll learn that we can't eat money.
Yeah.
So it kind of falls into that as well. And I love the fact that you're absolutely seeing that, and not only that, but expressing that not only through music, but through this vehicle right now, because that's something that a lot of people have to really get behind and really understand, not only from a creative standpoint, but just a personal standpoint as well. You can take a look at what you're doing and wonder, is this actually fulfilling me? Or even if it's not fulfilling me, is it actually helping me work towards what's going to be that fulfilling thing? If it's just like to get your next material possession or to get your next number one hit or just to get something that's for a specific status to feed your ego, then you're probably not really doing it right.
Yeah, 100%. And also I wanted to add, because as you were talking, I was thinking about this, someone could turn that around and be like, oh, that's just something you're saying because, to reflect poorly on bands that are successful, that do get the number one hits. Like, no, I don't put them all in the same pool. So like, to give you an example, if that were to happen with SickSense and we were an arena band one day, I would be happy, not because all of a sudden I can, buy a boat and a mansion and all that. Like, that wouldn't be the happiness aspect of it. Would be that I'm reaching more people. My music is speaking to more people. My impact is bigger. I can, and then for the show, exactly, it's like job creation. Like, now we can have a big production and we can employ a lot of people, and this can become an entity that's larger than just ourselves. And I think that's a beautiful thing. So I think there are bands that and artists that are there, at the top, and yeah, they're making a shit ton of money. But they're not like happy just because of that. They're happy because that's enabling them to do so many other things that'll provide good in the world. So it's always, as I say, case by case. There's big artists I've met and they're just like the most humble, down to earth, amazing people. And then I've met big artists that are just overinflated egos that don't deserve it, but vice versa too. I've met small bands where it's like the ego is insane and they don't have like any followers at all. So it just case by case, and don't judge people, by their bank account, I guess.
Yeah. And like you guys said, to add to this conversation, from my perspective, it's like, yeah, happiness is relative. And I think what I've learned over the years, like the best advice I can give people is that, like, don't try to just be happy. Like, everyone like throws that term around, like, oh, be happy. Like, that's the goal, is to be happy. It's like, well, what does happiness mean? It can mean different things to different people. So what helps keep me really grounded is just like stay focused and have goals, like have tangible goals, like something that's realistic. Like, you can be like us as musicians. It's like, yeah, we'd love to be an arena band. That's like, that should be the goal. Like, if you're a pro wrestler, you want to be the world champion, but you got to like take it day by day, like one step at a time. So it's like, well, what can I do today to get towards that? Like, how can I grow my social media following? Like, how many hours a day can I practice my instrument?
But in a healthy way.
In a healthy way.
Don't let it consume you.
Don't get super obsessed. It's just little by little. That's how you reach your goals.
Yeah. In a healthy way. And I think you really summed that up both perfectly, Vicky, from what you're talking about. Yeah, there's bands out there that are huge, but it depends upon, like, is the happiness they're having. It's like they're connecting with more people. They're positively impacting more people. Yeah, you continue to grow and still find that happiness in there. But again, as long as you're doing it for the reasons that are more fulfilling for the long term, not fulfilling for that dopamine hit or for that ego boost right then and there. And then, Robby, you bringing it back to that as well just absolutely amplifies it on even further. Because I remember I was in like this leadership training for my job, and the first question was like, well, what's your ultimate goal in life? And everyone just said, be happy, be happy, be happy. And I added to it, I'm like, I want like find happiness through fellowship. And I use that word because I had a conversation with Peter, the vocalist of Exel, and we were talking about this, and I love connecting with people like this. I love forging the relationships I've made through music, through this podcast, through going to shows and just seeing how the stuff that I do, and not only the stuff that I like to do, but how it positively impacts so many people, how it has positively impacted so many friends, how it's impacted my life to allow this positive energy to continue to flow. And if I'm able to continue to do that, then it's like I'm finding happiness from those types of connections and building up on those positive relationships and amplifying those positive attributes as life goes on. So it's kind of like you take a look at that. It's like, okay, but how? Like, what's the thing that really drives you? Once you figure that out, then you are able to really start to push forward and get a further understanding of what really is going to make you happy in the long term and how you can get to that point in a healthy way, not the obsessive way where you're going to put so much into it where it's going to become a negative, in a healthy, balanced way.
Yeah. And I will add to that, sometimes you need to do it the wrong way to figure out the right way too. I think a lot of people in today's age are a little like they're living life with training wheels on, you know. Sometimes you gotta fall, you gotta scrape your knees, you gotta figure out, hey, this isn't working, to figure out what does work. I say that as like a self-trained vocalist as well. Like sometimes in these interviews, you know, I'm asked about technique and how I did it and all that, and I'm like, well, I wasn't afraid to like do it the wrong way. Just I had, especially when I was younger, just like over ambitious recording sessions, like singing for 10 hours, and then you wake up the next day and you have no voice, and it's like, oh, I better not do that again, you know? So yeah.
Yeah, don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to fail. It's
exactly.
like, yeah, I could add like a personal anecdote from my life. It was like my 4th or 5th show ever. I literally played in front of like 10,000 people at Bloodstock, and I shit the bed. That was like the worst show I could have ever done in my life. But I'm like, I've never done shows before, and I just got this opportunity to play with my other bands like Mojo, and we were just like headlining main stage, and I'm like, oh, okay, like we're just not headlining, but like playing in front of an incredibly huge audience, and I was just not prepared for that. But the reason I'm bringing it up is like that really like stuck with me. Like, wow, I really need to work on this. And since then, I've become really, really good. And now I'm deserving to get back on this stage. And I've been like, okay, I want to be in a band one day and go back there and do a proper job this time. Because like I learned my lesson the hard way.
Those are two perfect examples of not being afraid to fail. And it's this, I believe it's the second rule of success from Arnold Schwarzenegger was don't be afraid to fail. You can't always win, but don't be afraid of making decisions because you're not always going to win, but you learn more from when you lose versus when you win. Because when you lose, you learn more about yourself, about your own resilience, about your own integrity versus when you win. Because when you win, it's all good and everyone's good and everything's happy. And yeah, you learn how to win, but you don't learn how to have that perseverance, to have that moment of adversity and how to get through it. So those are two great examples. I do want to ask about Cross Me Twice, though, because there are 2 singles out right now as we're recording this, Wildfires and On Repeat. There are 8 other songs on this album. Now, I'm not going to ask you to pick your favorite because that's like asking you to pick a favorite child. That just doesn't seem right.
Yeah.
But I will ask you this. Out of the 8 songs that are not out as singles right now, which is the one that you are the most excited for people to listen to?
It's at this point in time, it is tough because the next single we're putting out, we've already like filmed that music video and it's like coming out very soon. So it's at this point in time, I'm a little biased because I'm like, well, I'm excited for this one, you know? Whereas maybe when we were writing the album, I wouldn't have said that, you know, maybe I would have chosen a different one. But I will say for myself, I am excited about the next few singles in general because they're going to be like my personal favorites. So Masquerade Parade, that's the next one, which is very Halloween themed. So I'm very excited about that. And I'm also excited about In This Carousel and Follow Me because those are like more emotional songs and I just love emotional music. Like fun music is great, party music is great, angry music is great, but I love emotional music.
For me, it's probably the closing song, Follow Me. It's very emotional. It's like about everything we've talked about in this podcast here. It really hits home for me. It was a fun experience writing the record overall. It was like I felt like in the past we'd get like a little more political in some songs, started touching on more personal things like in SickSense for me as a lyricist. But then with this album, Cross Me Twice, it's really emotional. So my favorites are actually the closing song, Follow Me, and the opening song, Sell Out. It's going to hit hard. I don't think people are going to expect it. Like every song on this record is like, whoa, oh, okay, they did that? Wow, nice. Hopefully they'll react that way. Or sometimes they're like, why are they doing all this? It's a bunch of crap, but that's fine too.
Well, now you got me excited to listen to Follow Me when it comes out, because if you're saying like this whole podcast, this whole conversation we had is a nice like amalgamation of what it's about, then I mean, how could this not be an endorsement for the past, 45-ish minutes to when this album comes out or when Follow Me is released as a single, that everyone should be able to go and check it out and really dive deep into it to not only get the emotional portion of it, but then really see more of what SickSense has to offer beyond what's already released. Like, there's going to be so much more to go. There's so much more to see. There's so much more to feel. And best part is this is just one album. There's so much more to explore.
Yeah.
That is very true.
Love to. Yeah.
Oh, it's going to happen. I have no doubt about that.
Yeah. I mean, we always, at least in our heads, write music. Like, we have started, noodling around with new ideas and future album, like the next album. But it's interesting how the process, right after we finish this one, we're like, all right, we'll take a break. We're not going to write another album right away. But then just life happens and we're, I don't know, having a conversation about something. And then it's like, oh, that would be a great concept for a song. Write that down. And this whole year has been filled with those moments where it's like, write that idea down. And like, we have so many ideas just for themes and lyrics and stuff like that already, because I think once you open that door, it's like, you can't ever close it. Your brain just works that way,
Yeah, we're always like, we're preparing to release a new album, but we're also writing the follow-up to it as well. So it's always like that. So.
I mean, you're not limiting yourself to just a certain creative or writing window. You're just letting inspiration just hit whenever it does.
Yeah.
Just kind of like whenever you have that conversation, you feel like, hey, that'd be a good concept for a song. You're like that, good old clip from SpongeBob when he's got the binoculars on that Patrick, write that down.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I feel like that's exactly what's just going on in your head at that moment when you think about it's like, that'd be a great idea for a song. And all you're thinking about is just, I got to get this down so we do not lose this.
Yeah. And I think, of course, everyone's different, but songwriting for me it's a two-phase process. It's the first process of having that initial idea, that inspiration, the creative spark. And then the second one is more the methodical, experienced, okay, never mind the inspiration and the feels. Let's practically make this a song. Let's talk structure. Let's talk arrangement, like the things that a lot of artists are like, oh, you shouldn't do that because okay, like I feel like this is okay. Metal music, for example. There's a lot of metal musicians that are self-taught. They just grabbed a guitar and started playing. They're like, I don't know music theory. I don't know anything about that, and I don't want to learn that because it'll kill inspiration or whatever. It's like, no, you should learn that because then you can take the inspiration and then apply all these things that you need to know about a skill. Like, you're not going to operate on someone. You're not going to cut someone open, do surgery if you don't know what you're doing.
Based on emotion.
This
is the way this feels right.
This feels right. Yeah. No. So I think music is the same. And if you want to truly achieve like the best song you can, the best record you can, you need all those tools. But I think it's good to separate it into like a two-part situation where it's like, okay, you have the theme and the inspiration and the idea, which that comes from the genuine place of creativity. And then the second phase, which is like, all right, but we are musicians and this is a job and it is a skill set. How do we make this the best it can be?
Yeah, that's like the technical element side to it, like the actual music songwriting side. And then for me, like the human element, like that you get the inspiration from is just living life. It's like, go work, just do your day job, meet people, interact, have your experiences, problem solve. If something comes up, like, oh no, the sink's leaking.
Yeah, I was
we
about
got
to
deal
say,
with the sink. Like,
sink has been leaking.
Yeah, we have to like fix that later today. It's like, oh, why do I have to do this? But it happens. It's just like, deal with it, go through these life experiences, and then
write a song about it.
Then reflect, and then you can you can write a song about it. You can reflect. You can be like, hey, in this situation, did I handle it in the best way? I think people go into any situation with like the best of intentions, but sometimes things get heated. You're having a bad day. You didn't sleep well, or something happened, and you're upset. Something else is going on that's affecting your mood, and maybe you're not handling things in the best way and interacting with people in a terrible manner, but it's life. Live and you learn, and just like admit when you're wrong and just move on. That's all you can do. You can't hold on to the past.
Well, now I know if there's a song called Sinking Feeling that comes out from SickSense. I know it was inspired by the sink leaking. That's exactly what I'm assuming it is.
It's not going to be a metaphor. It's going to be very literal.
As literal.
What do they mean by that? Exactly what it says.
The sink was leaking, and we were feeling. That's exactly what it was. Well, as we're right about to end 2024 as well, with Cross Meets What's coming out on February 14th, 2025, what does the band have planned for 2025 going forward? Like, I know there's probably things you can't say about it, but if there's some stuff you can just tease us with so we can like try and create our own treasure map to what you got planned for 2025, I'd love to hear those little hints or teasers or just like the breadcrumbs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean the thing we can talk about is like our release show. February 14th, which is Valentine's Day. It happens to be a Friday. That's when the album's coming out. We're also playing a show here in Phoenix, Arizona.
Filming a music video.
We're filming a music video that day too. It's gonna be like a whole special weekend. Like we have a listening party the next day too. It's the one thing we could do that's kind of in our control. Like, yeah, let's put on our own show and let's make it a cool experience for everyone that comes out. So that's very much out there and announced. And if you're watching this and you're in the Phoenix area or Arizona in general, you want to make that drive, we'd be happy to have you. But aside from that, we are, working on more music videos, possibly some shows leading up to this, like as a support slot, just to kind of build momentum towards our headline show. And then beyond that, I think it's just kind of open for us. Like I mentioned, we're writing new music. There's not an exact timeline for that when that would happen, but ideally, like it wouldn't be too long until the follow-up album comes out as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So like what Vicky said, like the things that are in our control is doing the music videos, and writing new music, working on the follow-up album. We plan to do that in 2025. We're already working on it now. And then we'd love to play more shows, but that's up to the fans and the booking agents to see our worth and just give us a shot to do it. We'd love to do that, but some things aren't entirely in your control. It's like, I'd be like, I'd love to, but is there a draw for it?
That's another thing, just to throw that in there, because fans don't know, and sometimes we get comments, they're like, why don't you come here to play or whatever? I'm like, it's not like we were offered it and we declined. I don't have a personal vendetta against your city. It's just like the biggest thing you can do as a fan of music, if you really want a band to come play a show, is just spread the word. And if there's enough of an interest in that city and like a booking agent or a promoter or something just keeps seeing that band being spoken about, they're going to be like, all right, people are talking about this band. Let's bring them down, So it's the biggest thing you can do to help. And it costs nothing. Just takes up a bit of your time,
Takes up a little bit of your time, a little bit of your spoken word, and a little bit of time typing it out on social media.
Yeah.
And there's a lot still to come from SickSense, but if you're in the Phoenix area, you probably spent Valentine's Day 2016 taking your significant other to go see the first Deadpool movie. But since then, your significant other probably has said, I am making sure I plan to approve every other Valentine's Day date. That was 9 years ago. You got a chance to make this happen. So be like, hey, baby, we're going to see SickSense play their release show tonight. That's what we're doing on Valentine's Day. Yeah. And if you don't do that, I don't know what to tell you, but just go and do it.
That's true. And then even if you're single, you might meet someone there because there's going to be other people that are single there. So that would be a story to tell. Like imagine like someone like met someone at our show and got married in the future. Damn.
Free guest list for life.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to have couples, we're going to have single people out that show. It's going to be a whole good time. That's the main key. But Vicky, Rob, I got one question I got remaining for both of you. It's something I like to ask every artist I bring on the podcast as a way for us to get to know more new music and for you to support the music you love. So collectively between the two of you, can you give me 3 bands or artists that you love that you would love to see more people get into right now?
Like newer artists, like... up and coming, or
that's typically kind of what I look for to try and get some new artists some recognition. But if you've got an artist like I don't think they get enough recognition, even though they're pretty big, just go for it. Or if you're really inspired by somebody, go for it. That's the rules are kind of open here. I don't really enforce them very heavily.
We might name same artists or similar artists. I don't know if you want to start.
Yeah, we've seen some bands that are really cool. Like I can name. We saw Silly Goose last night. They were incredible. That was a phenomenal band. Like a lot of energy. They're
so fun.
They seem young too. So yeah, I hope they go far. And then other 2 bands we saw recently was a Disembodied Tyrant.
They're a deathcore.
Yeah, that's a deathcore band. They're awesome.
Kind of. Yeah.
Really cool. Really cool. I think this was their first tour that they did that we just saw them at. They opened up for Flesh God Apocalypse. And then I really enjoyed, I knew about them for years. I never got to see them. We saw the same show was Ingested. They're a deathcore band from
Oh,
Manchester, from
yeah.
the UK. Incredible live show, like a lot of energy. So
Yeah.
that's definitely a fun time if you go see these bands.
There's a, this question's coming at a good time because like we've been going to 2 shows at least a week, 2-3 shows a week, and it's kind of been crazy. And I don't want to say this like in a mean way, but it's been crazy that a lot of times the opening band or the direct support band is outperforming the headliner. And I don't know if that's just like they're more hungry, they haven't been doing it for 20 plus years, so they're not like tired. But it's been kind of refreshing to see because usually you go to show and it's usually the headliner and everyone else is just kind of like, okay, that was kind of cool, but like now it's time for like the real band to come on stage. But a lot of the bands we saw recently, it was like the support bands were just as good, if not better. And that's really refreshing. I don't know. It's like healthy competition, I guess. So it's kind of hard to choose a top 3 because like there's so many of these bands where I'm like, well, why aren't you bigger? Like, why aren't you headlining?
Well, okay. Bonus one. I forgot to mention. I get a 4th bonus.
Oh, which one?
I love. It's not a metal person, but I love Tommy Richmond. Like he's a singer.
Oh god,
he's our R&B hip hop singer. I'm loving his stuff. He's just blowing up everywhere, and like I'm just
on the radio,
super big on that. I'm like, oh, every time a song comes on, I'm like,
yeah. He's got one big song right now. What's it called?
A Million Dollar Baby.
$1 Million Baby. It just sounds like it was written like 30 years ago. But with a modern production, it's great.
But then I love everything he does. Like every song, I'm like, it's great. Just sign me up.
Yeah, so those are some good picks. I have to agree with you, Vicky. Lately, same thing with shows too. The ones that I've been seeing, there's always like one support band that just shines above almost anybody else, and even over the headliner too. I think the only time I can remember this year where like the headliner was completely above and beyond anybody that was in support was the times I got to go see Sum 41 on their final tour. Like, it was like, they still freaking got it. That was basically what. But every other time I was like, there's that opener or something or a direct support that is just bringing it a little bit more than that headliner every time. It's a good thing to see because maybe those headliners will get hungry again and then everything just keeps rising from there. Yeah. That's what we can hope.
Absolutely. One would hope. Yeah, it's just great to see because, like, you go to a show, you're there for 4 hours or however long. You want to have fun with every band. You don't want to be rolling your eyes and being like, oh, why are they on this bill? They suck, So it's good to not be seeing that, I guess. It's good to be seeing bands that don't suck, I guess.
Yeah. It's a good way to put it. Well, Vicky, Rob, I want to appreciate both of you for taking the time today to be on the Chord Progression Podcast. Absolutely had a great conversation with both of you. Yeah, I can't say enough about it, so I want to thank you for that. I'm going to close this out with 3 things. First things first. When it comes to SickSense, when it comes to Cross Me Twice coming out on Valentine's Day, and when it comes to finding the band coming to play a show near you when they're able to, or being able to talk about the band so your local promoter is like, hey, we got to put them on a bill, or just support the band in general. Description of the podcast where it says find SickSense online. Links labels are going to be there for everything for you to check out. So I'm doing all the research for you. Everything's going to be there. Super easy, super convenient for you to get into SickSense. So go down there and do it. Now it's time for number 2. Vicky and Rob, whenever I have a guest on the podcast, I enjoy the podcast. I tend to make a certain promise as a way to say thank you. I appreciate you taking the time. And I want to continue to support the band in the future. And this is how I do it. My promise is when. This implies this is going to happen. We just don't have a day or time yet. But when I get to see you both perform live for the first time, of course we'll enjoy it. Have a good time. But I'm going to come up and find you both. I'm going to come and say hi. But the real promise is first round's on me.
Nice. Appreciate you.
No, you're very welcome. And now it's time for number 3. As we bring this to conclusion, I cannot say goodbye because I made you a promise. I must make good on that promise. And I would love to see you come back to the podcast again in the future. Goodbye is way too final. We can't go about that. So I'm going to end it by saying, I'll see you later.
See you later, Kevin.
Well, folks, this is my interview with Vicky and Robby from SickSense. And now it's time for Kevin's final thought. Don't be afraid to fail. You can't always win, but don't be afraid of making decisions. That is, I think, rule number 2 of Arnold Schwarzenegger's 6 rules for success. And it absolutely is something we talked about here, but it absolutely reps up into everything that Crossing Twice is about, because when Six Sense was doing these things, when they were writing music, or even when Vicky and Robby were discovering what they could do as vocalists, as songwriters, as lyricists, everything, they weren't afraid to fail. They weren't afraid to try new things. And because of that, did they end up succeeding in everything? No, you're not going to succeed in everything. Beyond that, though, they're able to learn so many different things about themselves and be able to go forward. Like they said, at times of the band, some of the band members beforehand want to do business one way, but they knew that wasn't going to work due to prior experience, them trying it and not working. So they're not afraid to fail, and they're not afraid to try new things, but also not being afraid to fail also speaks to just when it comes to the world we live in today, when it comes to having relationships with someone that you're very closely connected with, like a significant other, your family, your friends, or just society in general. Don't be afraid to fail and just take the easy road. Don't be afraid to fail and find the path that you want to take, because it's going to be hard. It's going to be tough. If you want to speak up, speak up. If you think something's not right, say it. It's not going to help if you just stay quiet all the time and reserve yourself, because whether you're connecting with a friend and you're afraid that bringing up something is going to offend them or make them mad if it's something that is negatively impacting their lives, or just the lives of people around them, just how that activity is going, or that just what they're doing is just weird, or just not necessarily weird, but just detrimental to their own good. So you bring it up, and yeah, it's tough. But when you bring it up, then we get to the part where we can actually have connection, commonality, and we can have those growth moments versus being quiet and then losing out on that great balance and great teeter-totter of respect, integrity, and friendship, everything that goes apart with that. So I really like this conversation. I really like what Six Sense brought to the table on this one, and I hope you guys enjoyed it too. So be sure to follow along with Six Sense. Description of the podcast has everything there for you to follow them on social media. Check out their YouTube videos when Cross Me Twice comes out, where you can go listen to it, stream it, pre-save it, and where you can find them in a live show near you at some point in the future. Be sure to subscribe to the Chord Progression Podcast right down here on YouTube. Hit the follow button, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Hit the like button to push these episodes in the algorithm. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. They are in the description of the podcast below. Thank you, Vicky. Thank you, Rob. And that's going to be me, everybody. Thank you for listening to the Chord Progression Podcast. My name is Kevin, and you guys know how every single one of us is big, healthy, and hearty. See y'all!